Thank you very much for having me. So I'm very excited to share my joint research with Anne-Marie Walter at University of Nottingham and Sunai Park at Seoul National University. Today I'm going to present about civil servants whistleblowing in South Korea in the context of anti-corruption reform. So the paper begins with the simple but important questions. So who are motivated to whistleblow in the public sector and why? So these are not novel questions, but we decided to revisit the questions because answers from past research on the subject are not fully satisfactory to us. So this particular research leverages the context of implementing a recent anti-corruption policy in South Korea, widely known as the Kim Young-ran Act. So the adoption of Kim Young-ran Act has provided a useful insight to our research as civil servants indeed are motivated to whistleblow after policy implementation. So according to 2018 report by the former chairperson of the Anti-Corruption Commission in South Korea, Park Eun-jung, there are more than 100 cases of whistleblowing for 2 years since the adoption of anti-corruption policy, Kim Young-ran Act. And then the majority of the cases were self-reported. Then global anti-corruption NGOs such as Freedom House and Transparency International also have paid close attention to this policy. So the 2019 Freedom House report said that the Kim Young-ran Act has established some clear criteria for anti-corruption reform. And then 2019 report by Transparency International gives more concrete evidence with the numbers that the country, here South Korea, has improved by 3 points since 2017, which is a year after the adoption of the Kim Young-ran Act. So yet, we still don't know at an individual level, so who are more motivated to whistleblow and why. So you can think of a variety of individual characteristics linked to whistleblowing behavior. So it could be linked to public service motivation, like Professor Im-bok Lee said. And then it could be linked to psychological factors linked to social norms and learning. And in this paper, we focus on several civil service characteristics within civil service organization, as we believe that their identity is affected and shaped within civil service organization. So as I mentioned at the beginning, so existing research on whistleblowing has a range of a bit of issues and gaps. So for instance, so some research looks at whistleblowing in an institutional vacuum. So it's hard to understand how civil servants ever motivate to whistleblow. And other research has inadequate foundation to understand why individual members of organization behave differently. So for instance, collective action theory emphasizes a need for a big push type of reform measure. But how these measures eventually lead to a new, less corrupt status at an individual level is still in the black box. Then there are a range of methodological issues that make us hard to understand what the causal mechanism is. So such as a small sample size, relying on simple correlation based on regression analysis, and cross-national analysis that's vulnerable to reverse causality issues. So in this paper, we first discuss how the Kim Young-ran Act functions to give stimulus to ethical reporting. So I'm sure most of you are familiar with what the Act is about. The bottom line is that so it gives clear guidelines of how to report misconduct within an organization and the details of how reporting is processed and how whistleblowers and their cooperators are protected. And finally, how they are punished if not acting properly, or rewarded if their reporting benefits organization. Then, at an individual level, so we extend a discussion of why some are more motivated to whistleblow than others based on the cost-benefit analysis logic. So civil servants' decision to whistleblow will depend on their perceived costs and benefits of reporting, which should be affected by mainly two central factors within civil service organization. So first, power distribution within organization hierarchy, and second, organizational culture and norms. So power distribution among members of organization will affect the degree to which they have knowledge about procedures to report, the extent to which their report will be taken seriously, and whether they face retaliation for reporting. And regarding culture and norms, so specific contexts are more conducive to whistleblowing by certain groups of members, because their constraints posed by such culture and norms will shape individual members' behavior differently. So overall, in South Korea's hierarchical civil service organization and more strict civil service culture, we expect that some characteristics such as civil service rank, gender, and age will be central in determining their whistleblowing behavior. Our expectation is that so those who perceive more benefits of whistleblowing than the cost of doing so will be more willing to whistleblow. So based on this discussion, we propose three hypotheses related to civil service age, gender, and rank. And first, we predict that male civil servants will be more willing to whistleblow after policy intervention compared to female civil servants. And second, older civil servants will be more willing to whistleblow after policy implementation compared to younger civil servants. And third, higher-ranking civil servants will be more willing to whistleblow after policy intervention compared to lower-ranking civil servants. So to test this hypothesis, we leveraged a natural experiment setting of implementation of the anti-corruption policy, Kim Il-sung Act in 2016. So specifically, we looked at civil servants, how civil servants' intentions to report misconducts changed before and after the policy implementation. And regarding outcome measures, so data on whistleblowing itself is not open to the public. So we rely on perception measures based on our annual time series surveys conducted between 2015 and 19, which cover both pre and post-implementation periods. So our samples are drawn from all central and local government agencies in South Korea, except a few central agencies not accessible due to security or cost-effective reasons, such as National Defense Ministry or National Intelligence Service. And our samples represent the civil service population in Korea in terms of age, gender, civil service rank, and the recruitment path. So in 2015, a year before the implementation of the Act, so 1,350 surveys completed. And then from 2016 to 2019, after the policy implementation, every year we conducted surveys with thousands of civil servants. So our data include a number of individual characteristics, not just age, gender, and civil service rank, which are our independent variables, but also education, marital status, job category, and etc. And in addition, we use matching method. Before analyzing the two groups, we use a matching method to make sure that these two groups are comparable. So, so we matched pre and post implementation samples on 9 individual characteristics that's shown in the previous slide. And so using matching method for analysis, our analysis is important for a couple of reasons. So first, so our control and treatment groups, which is pre and post implementation samples, are inherently exposed to a temporal difference. So civil service population that our samples drawn might change a bit. And second, some characteristics shown in the table, such as age, civil service rank, and the length of public service are maybe highly correlated. So we use the person exact matching method, which has an advantage over other matching methods, such as propensity score matching, Mahalo-Novice distance matching, in terms of reducing bias and measurement errors. So our dependent variable is answer to survey question. You're willing to file allegation of misconduct in your organization in a 5-point scale ranging from strongly disagree to strongly agree. And our independent variables, there are 3 independent variables coded as categorical variables, such as gender, age, and civil service rank. So from next slide, I'm going to show you the result of our analysis. And first, I'll show you first the average treatment effect based on the Neyman model that assesses the result of natural experiment design. And then I'm going to show you based on more sophisticated multivariate analysis, specifically multi-level or probability models. So here, the figure shows mean responses by subgroups before and after policy implementation. So the blue bars indicate pre-implementation responses, and the red bars indicate post-implementation responses. So first, looking at the effect of gender, you see that so there's no significant change among female civil servants, but male civil servants become more willing to report misconduct in their organization after the policy intervention. And regarding the effect of age, we have 3 groups here. The youngest group, age 19 to 36, and middle age, and then the oldest one. And what you see here is that as civil servants become older, their willingness to report misconduct also increases. And specifically, those 2 older groups, the marginal effect is significant. And finally, regarding the effect of civil service rank, again, we have 3 groups here. So the lowest ranking group between grade 7 to 9, and mid rank grade 5 6, and the highest ranking grade 4 or higher. So the result shows that the marginal gap, the higher ranking civil servants are, the marginal gap, the greater the marginal gap is. And especially, the marginal gap is only significant in 2 higher ranking civil servants groups. So in the next slide, so I'm going to test whether these results confirmed through multivariate analysis. So given the dependent variable is ordinal and the data are hierarchical structured, so we used the multi-level order probability models. So the total sample size after matching is slightly over 6,000. And please note that with the exactly balanced subset of data, you can estimate the effect of independent variables without control variables. So what you need to focus here is the 3 sets of interaction variables. So the first model on gender, second age, and third civil service rank. So the first interaction variable in the gender model. So here, the baseline category is female. So here, the interaction variable is positive and significant, which means that the marginal effect on reporting is greater among male than female civil servants. And then looking at the second model, again, two interaction variables. It's only possible and significant when it's interacted with most senior group. So here the baseline category is the youngest group, age 19 to 36. So the marginal effect is only significant greater among the oldest group vis-a-vis the youngest group. And the final model, the third model, so there are two interaction variables. And here baseline category is the lowest ranking group, so grade 7 to 9. So both interaction variables are positive and significant. Shows that the marginal effect on reporting is greater among higher ranking groups vis-a-vis the lowest ranking group. So in conclusion, the Kim Young-won Act has increased intentions of reporting misconduct in organization among some civil servants, but mainly among the already powerful to do so, such as male, older, and higher-ranking civil servants. And there are no significant changes among younger and female and lower-ranking civil servants. And so how do we interpret these findings? So our explanations are twofold. So first, so it's possible that, so indeed, the anti-corruption policy is inadequate, and then we need more effective protective mechanisms, institutional measures, so that these groups, less privileged groups, feel less reluctant to take on action. But second, we actually suspect that the insignificant changes among these groups may be due to the specific nature of anti-corruption policy and the context of Korean society, rather than flaws in the law itself. So the former title of the anti-corruption policy is Improper Solicitation Graft Act. So it mainly discourages, mainly aims to discourage improper solicitations and the acceptance of financial advantages. And moreover, gift-giving culture and traditions in Korean society are more relevant to higher-ranking older and male civil servants who are widely exposed to business entertainment and should be more directly affected by this reform measure. So simply saying, so those like female, younger, and lower-ranking civil servants might perceive themselves less relevant to this reform measure. So these points relate to the limitations of research and the future research directions. So we acknowledge that. So the anti-corruption policy that we examined this study will only trigger a particular type of whistleblowing, not other types such as #MeToo whistleblowing. So future research needs to seek on label, so what type of anti-corruption policy will motivate what type of civil servant to whistleblow. So thank you very much.